Betting, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Bet with the Best podcast. Its mission is to explore better ways to bet on races, to seek out new, successful players, and to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. I am very pleased to announce that the Bet with the Best podcast has its first sponsor, and it's an ideal sponsor, Amwager, an ADW built by horse players for horse players. Amwager has all sorts of unique features designed to give you an edge when betting. For example, one of my favorite tools is the conditional wagering system that's lightning fast and lets you set the minimum price you will take on a wager and then will fire off the bet at the last possible second, assuming the odds meet your minimum. We always talk about value on the Bet with the Best podcast, and this is a great tool for ensuring that you are betting only when you think you have an edge. It's great for win betting, but Amwager lets you apply it to other pools as well, such as exacta and trifecta wagers. Another tool that I really like is the Dutch wagering tool that lets you weight your bets rather than simply boxing a set of horses. We've discussed on Bet with the Best podcast the strategy of tossing a weak favorite and boxing several other horses in exactas and or trifectas and supers. And this tool lets you do that in a much more efficient way than a simple box. Yet another cool tool that Amwager provides is a fair value exacta grid. On Bet with the Best, we've talked about how sometimes there will be significant discrepancies between the win pool and the exacta pool, particularly at NYRA tracks where the computer teams are in one pool but not the other. This tool will flag such discrepancies and help point you to possible underlays and overlays. We've also talked about with computer model players on Bet with the Best, and Amwager has another great feature for those of you who are using computer models or thinking about doing so. That is the ability to wager by file upload. You can quickly upload a large number of wagers using a simple CSV format. Those are just a few of the many special features that Amwager has to offer, along with live video and race replays, free integrated form-to-win past performance information, and much more. Amwager is licensed and operated in the U.S., and best of all, they will actually pay you to play. If you sign up now and deposit and bet $150, then you will earn a $150 lump sum bonus. So there's no reason not to give Amwager a try. If you want to bet with the best, then you need the best tools there are to wager with. You need Amwager. This Best of Bet with the Best podcast, that's a mouthful, is the first of what I hope will be many Best of podcasts. Each will focus on a different topic and will consist of segments about that topic from several past podcast guests. In essence, you'll get to hear what they each had to say about the topic. I chose identifying and exploiting value as a topic for this episode because it's key to being successful as a horse player, and many of the guests have provided valuable insight on the topic. Even though this is a gambling game, many horse players do not approach the game with the mindset of a gambler, which is typically focused primarily on making good bets. Instead, they approach it exactly the way they were taught and exactly the way most racing pundits espouse. Instead of focusing on making a good bet, they focus solely on picking winners. That makes them very near-term results-oriented and with every bet and gets in the way of long-term success. That sort of mistake would seldom occur in most other gambling games where people that are good at it fundamentally understand the difference between a good bet and a bad bet. However, in racing, you still have people that are smart but don't really think much at all about the bet. For them, it's all about picking winners. That's probably what motivated me the most to start producing the Bet with the Best podcast. But before we get started, I wanted to spend a little time defining what I mean by the word value, which often means different things to different people. Some think the term refers to a horse at long odds. Others think it refers only to EV, and sometimes even chastise those who make wagers that may not necessarily maximize return on investment. Others think of it just refers to picking winners and cashing tickets, and chastise those who may seemingly say foolish things, foolish in quotes, like that was a bad winning bet or a good losing bet. That is only a few of the ways that I've heard the term used. All of them are right to some degree, and all of them are wrong to some degree. When you make a sports wager, including any wager on a horse race, you are not betting on a team or player or horse. You are actually betting on yourself. What do I mean by that? In some types of gambling, the probability of winning and the payout offered for a winning bet are fixed and static. Example, roulette, dice, and cards. And you can calculate your odds and edge precisely to determine value. That is not the case when you are wagering on sports, including on a horse race. In that case, the true chance of winning is not known by the gambler or any other mere mortal. Instead, the gambler must analyze all available information to estimate the likely payoffs and chances of cashing various wagers. So you are essentially betting on your own ability to predict the future better than other people. And any estimated value is based on your prediction. So obviously you cannot accurately assess your value if your predictions are bad. In other words, if they don't closely represent the true payouts and chances of winning. But to make any sports wagering decision, you need to assume that your opinion is correct. Otherwise, you might as well not play. Smart players will track their bets over the long term to see how well their opinions actually do match reality and adjust accordingly, but that is a topic for another discussion. If you're interested in reading more about what I have to say on this topic, then you can read a blog piece that I wrote a few years ago called Value is in the Eye of the Beholder. But right now, we're going to hear what several of the Bet with the Best podcast guests had to say about finding and exploiting value. You will hear some of the same ideas repeated by multiple guests, but you will also hear some very different, sometimes even conflicting approaches, which only goes to demonstrate that there is more than just one way to boldly go where no horse player has gone before. So first, we will hear from Maury Wolff, who will talk about how it is essential to understand what your edge is and why you think it exists before you make a bet. He describes how players have to be dynamic and continuously look for new edges over time. So let's sit back and listen to Maury.
You've got to have an idea where your advantage lies. And if you can't figure out where your advantage lies, you shouldn't be betting. And you should ask yourself that question. What is my advantage in this race? Maybe it's I saw the tough trip and other people didn't. Good enough. Maybe it's that the horse was on a dead rail and the world didn't think when it was a dead rail, but I do. God bless. But if it's the horse has an 83 buyer and the next one has an 82, and isn't a very good reason. And if all you're doing is betting off public information, you have almost no chance in the world that exists today of leaving a winner over any period. Maybe you'll win for a day, but you're not going to win doing that. Betting the obvious, betting the, my God, if you're listening to 99% of the people who are telling you who's going to win the race, you're doing the wrong thing. They don't know. They've probably done less work than you've done. Not all of them, but most of them. And you've got no chance if that's your approach. Do your own work. Try to find something that works for you. And it's going to be different for different people. And play that thing that works for you and what you're good at. And don't try to compete with, just on general information. There's, to me, no stupider bet in the world than something like, I like the 3 in the first race and I like the 5 in the third race, so I'm going to play a 3 all 5, pick 3. Come on. It's just crazy. But that's such a common approach, and it's totally, it's got to be a losing. It's going to, if you approach the game like that, you're going to lose. Now, if you've got the money to lose and you don't care and it's entertainment, that's fine. But if you actually want to win, it's not fine. You should do better. You should expect better from yourself.
Yeah, the saying that I use, you talk about, just using obvious information. My saying is, if it's in the PPs, it's in the price.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you have to go beyond the obvious to find an edge. And if you're not doing that, you have no chance, I think is what you're saying.
Right. That really is what, for horse players to succeed in the modern game, they've got to create niches for themselves, and they've got to find situations which might be which a computer might not pick up on. You're not going to beat those guys. You're not going to beat the groups day in and day out. All you can hope to do is find good situations for yourself, and capitalize when those situations arise.
And you mentioned, I think, one of the places where you look for that opportunity is when there is something new, like something new. And I'll just give an example here. This will be I guess a little humble brag, redboarding, but I did talk about this on our podcast in advance, so it's not total redboard. But they introduced a brand new wager this year in the Triple Crown. That was a future wager for the Preakness. And it was clear to me when I started looking at the early odds that people had no clue how they should bet this pool and how it's different than like a future pool for the Derby. And the reason it was so different was that in the modern era of racing in recent years, trainers that if they don't win when they run in the Derby, they never run back in the Preakness. Certainly not the top stables. If they win, they've got to run because they're going for the Triple Crown. Although we even had some cases where they didn't do that. But everybody else, has no interest in the Preakness typically. But people were playing that like, they were playing Forte as the favorite in the Preakness, and he was basically the same price he was in the Preakness that he was in the Derby, which made no sense at all because he had to win the Derby before he wouldn't run in the Preakness, because Todd Pletcher never runs in the Preakness. So, they could make just as much as betting him to win the Derby. Instead, they were having to parlay, basically play a daily double on Forte. It was just a horrible bet. And that was how they were betting all the Derby runners, were way over bet because basically they were better off just playing those horses to win. Even Mage, who, everyone thought they had a great bet when he went to the Preakness, like a 21-1 future bet, but he was 15-1 in the Derby, and he wouldn't have been in the Preakness if he hadn't won the Derby. So you're still much better off just parlaying a win bet in the Derby into a win bet in the Preakness. And the horses, on the other hand, the horses that were targeting the Preakness were almost certain to go, assuming they stayed healthy, like Blazing Sevens and National Treasure and the horse that scratched for Brad Cox, First Mission. They were all way too high on the prices. You knew that on post time they're going to be much shorter. Now, so that was like a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I hammered that pool. My biggest bet this year was on the Preakness Future Pool. I bet a lot more on that than I did on the whole Derby card, and I, it really paid dividends. But I mean, I'm guessing next year it won't be quite so good. Maybe still be. It won't. That edge won't last forever. But the only reason I had that edge is because people didn't understand conditional probability and trainer tendencies, because it was a brand new bet and they were just sort of betting it like they bet any future bet. So I think that's the kind of examples you're talking about, and they really tend to arise when something is new. Would you agree with that?
100%. That is a clinic in how you approach betting in general and horse racing in particular. It's exactly how you do it. I have done a fair amount of casino stuff in my life, and showing up on opening day is a good thing to do at a casino. Mistakes get made early. They get corrected. That's how markets get efficient. And shame on you if you aren't looking for those opportunities, because they don't come along. They don't come along every day, and they can make your year. Absolutely perfect. And that's been true throughout the game. There are things like that. The other thing that needs to be said is when a situation like that arises, you don't bet one horse. You bet a portfolio of horses, because the edge is so large that you want to cash. You don't want to have an opinion. You want to have a winner. And so, no, you don't just say, oh, well, these 5 horses are all good prices, I'm going to bet one. You bet all 5. It's the right approach. More generally, and this isn't a new phenomenon, but it should be. It kind of goes along with the theme of the discussion here. The 3 best pools to bet in horse racing in America today, maybe the 9 best pools, are the win, place, and show pools of the Triple Crown events. It's the most remarkable win board you will see in horse racing. This is what it used to be like 40 years ago or 50 years ago or whatever, when people were betting on whoever, the Lawton card, or people were betting on whoever was picked by the public handicapper, or they were just betting on colors or whatever. The amount of dead money in the Triple Crown straight pools is mind-boggling, and it produces wonderful prices on the horses that can win the race. Now, do those horses occasionally win? Sure, but it's just extraordinary how, and you'll see it in 2 weeks at the Belmont, where you'll look up and you'll see some ridiculous horse who has absolutely no chance at 20 when he should be 100, and you'll probably see 3 horses like that if the field is full enough. If you just looked at the Preakness board, you couldn't believe what you were looking at, especially for the 2 worst horses, but basically for the 4 worst horses. Those are horses that on any race but a Triple Crown race are going to probably all be twice the 3 times the price that they were. And that's just another opportunity. That's just a situation where this is an opportunity. You're not going to make a living off that, but it's a pool you better be playing if you want to be taking advantage of the situations that horse racing presents to you. It's just a matter of an incredibly unsophisticated public in one pool or 3 pools if you go across the board. And that is something you don't see very often. The Preakness pool, as you point out, you're not going to see it next year. But when the situation arises, Preakness future pool, when the situation arises, for God's sakes, be prepared to take advantage of it. Happens on the racetrack.
But that's the mindset of a gambler. And horse players, they're gambling, but a lot of them don't have that gambling mindset where you're just trying to identify that value and, like you said, make a good bet. They're just more focused picking winners, and they're more results oriented. And I do think that gets in the way of long-term success for horse players, where that wouldn't really come into play in most other gambling games, where the people that are pretty good at it really understand what a good bet is. Where I think a lot of times in racing, you have people that are smart, but they don't really think about the bet. It's just more about picking the winner. That's one of the things that motivated me to do this podcast, but I don't know how you feel about that.
I could not agree more. If you only have, let us say, not true anymore, but for the longest of times, until the emergence of the groups, the following statement was true. If you have one skill and your choice is how to put a bet together or how to pick a winner, the person who knows how to put a bet together will kill the people who just know or think they know how to pick winners. There's too much randomness out there. And the randomness will come to the fore, and the people who would capitalize on the randomness would outperform the people who just are interested in I like the 3. And horse racing has always been a game, I like the 3. The question isn't who you like. The question is, who do you like at what price? You like the 3? Do you like him at 1 to 9? How about 3 to 5? How about 6 to 5? How about 2 to 1? That's the right question. Not that I like the 3. No, the right question is, what price do you like the 3 at? Now, maybe you don't like anybody else, but if he's too short a price, that just means pass the race. It doesn't mean you have to bet the 6, but it does mean that you better have a good idea of what the right price is on the 3, if that's who you're betting. And too many people just don't get beyond the I like the 3. You're doomed. If you can call it value, you can call it the right price, you can call it whatever you please. But you have to have a sense of what price the horse should be. Just like if you're betting a football game, it makes a lot of difference if the team you like is a 3-point underdog or a 3-point favorite or a 7-point favorite. Makes all the difference in the world. But just saying I like the Giants has no meaning. Now, again, that doesn't mean that you have to like the Packers. If the number comes up if the number is too big for you to play, you don't have to bet the other side. You just have to say the price is wrong for the team I like and go on to the next one. But I mean, it's been true from the beginning of time, it seems to me, that horse players have just focused on the one question at the expense of the relevant question of, is this a good bet? And I'd much rather know what a good bet is than have a handicapping opinion.
I obviously agree. And what's more, the more we talked about the win pool, which is the simplest case, but it gets multiplied when you go to exotic wagers, and the more exotic, the more it's multiplied. Trying to understand what's a good bet in a pick 5 is a really complicated question, much more so than a win bet. And like you said, especially today, you're competing against, the teams that understand the complexity and how to structure the bet. So, having that sense for what a good bet is even more important in the exotic pools and even more complicated, right?
Absolutely. Essentially, the more positions you're betting, the more places you can go wrong. And your competition has beautifully calibrated systems where they have a pretty accurate assessment of the probability of every horse in every race. I don't think I've ever met a layman or a regular gambler in my life who was particularly good at knowing that. It's hard. It is really hard to have the right price in a sequence of races. And that's who you're competing with. And good luck. And they're, as I said before, they're an ever larger percentage the more sophisticated the bet is, or the more complicated the bet is. And that's not by accident. It's because they've got a bigger advantage. And it's, another thing about, picking winners is the whole macho aspect of horse playing. You don't get any points for that. Check your ego at the door. Your ego doesn't help you at all. All it does is cause you not to understand what's happening. It's, to me, really foolish to not look at the entire world and understand there are people who do it better than you.
Next, you will hear Michael Kipness talk about making an odds line to identify value in the win pool. He also talks about how he insists on a much bigger edge today because of late odds changes than he did in the past.
So, you also, the better you are at making an odds on, if you do the work and you could set your own odds line on a horse, what you're willing to take, that's good too. That's really big. It's a very important thing to do. That's understanding the field, understanding what is this horse's odds worth relative to the field. So if a horse you make him 3-1 and he's 8-5, is he a play? No. I might play him in exotic somehow, but I ain't making a win bet on him. Not even my win bets are like far and few between. Like on a 9-race card, I might make 2 win bets, if that, or give out 2 win bets. I'm looking to hit the exotics. I'm a sucker for that. I don't want any part of win bets, especially horses at short prices. I'll give a win bet out if I know the horse is between 4-1 and 10, and up. If I know I have a chance to get 4-1. Sometimes these lines makers stink. They're awful. They shouldn't even be hired. And they make horses prices that you're not even going to get close to. So that was understanding all that.
Yeah, and that was good. I've had some people ask me questions about, you talk about value all the time on the show. Can you explain it? And I think you kind of did a good job there in the win pool. You said you make a horse 2-1 on your line, and that's your opinion on that horse's chances of winning. For you, value on that horse would be something significantly higher than 2-1. Then you're getting some value on that bet.
Even 5-2 or 3-1 is value.
But
If you
on the inverse of that, if it's even money or 6-5, it's clearly a bad bet based on your opinion. So that value is really based on your opinion of that horse's chances. It's not anybody else's opinion. It's what you think your opinion is. And like you said, if you can go through that exercise of actually assigning, what you think is a fair odds for that horse, then you can make that determination based on the actual off odds.
I'm great at that. I'm great at setting the right line.
And that's how you identify value when you decide to bet on that one or two horses on the card, right?
Absolutely. Yep. I had a horse yesterday at Indiana Grand that I was, eyeballing. And he came back in a spot and I made him 6-5, 7-5. I got 9-5. Even though he only paid $560 or $580, that was value. Because I made him like $460, $440.
Right.
That
you can have
value.
And I think that's important that, some people think value means a long shot, but it really just means, is it a better price than you think the horse should be?
Exactly. Right.
And what you're saying isn't 40 years ago when you first started, you could find value in 8-5 shots sometimes, or at least a lot more often than today, where the money's a little sharper in those 8-5 shots, or what you think should be an 8-5 shot now, but back in 40 years ago might have gone off at 2-1 or 5-2. Now they're going off at even money or 6-5.
Yes, because of the computer better. So you gotta, if you're making a horse 8-5, you better hope that he's 3-1, 5-2, because more than not, okay, so your horse is 8-5. And you think he should be 2-1, you're obviously not going to bet him at 8-5. But let's say he's 2-1, you're making him 2-1, and he's 3-1, right, on the board with 1 minute to go or 0 minutes to go. You made him 2-1, he's 3-1. Well, you're going to make a bet at 3-1 because you're getting value. But what's happening today is with the computer bettors, that 3-1 could go down to 8-5 before you know it, while the race is being run. So now you went from value to no value, and you say, "What the hell just happened?" That didn't happen in the past. When I was growing up playing horses, so value to me now it's a bigger range. If I make a horse 3-1, he better be 5-1. To protect the buffer for the computer bettors to knock them down at 3-1. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're saying that knowing that especially the shorter price horses tend to get bet down some at the end if they look like overlays to sharp players, then you've got to sort of take that into account and make sure that the odds are significantly above what you think are fair value before you make a play.
Yes. Yep.
And I
too hard.
And that's what makes it a little tougher today than it was when you first started. That's one of the big changes.
Exactly.
Next, we have Mike Maloney, who talks about how to exploit value while minimizing risk by starting with a low variance bet and then building out from that to make sure that if he's right about his main opinion, he cashes while still having a chance for a big score if he's right about his secondary opinions.
Yeah, the first thing I'm going to ask myself is, what's my edge? What do I know that the public doesn't know? Or, what is it? When I look at what the public's going to do in this race, where can I take advantage of that? In most races today, it's not there. Or if it's there, it's so slight that you can't take advantage of it. It's not the math doesn't work. It leads me to more to passing more races, certainly, but it also leads to, I'll bet this one combination, or I'll bet, maybe two combinations, whether it's a double, an exacta, sometimes even a try, or a pick three. Just if it came this one particular way, there's probably a little juice still in that one combination. But past that, I don't want to get involved. So basically, that would be kind of like an action bet, just something where if I'm really right, I'm not frustrated because that exacta paid $35 for two, and that was the value I saw in the race. So why not have it for a little something? If you miss it, it doesn't, you're not really hurt and you move on. But, just for mental stability, that's kind of the way I'll play those races now. If it's not an outright pass, maybe it's just an action play of some sort.
So what would cause you to go beyond the action play to a serious bet? What helps you?
It would be seeing an edge. It would be me having a different opinion than the public. Me feeling certain that the second choice is going to beat the favorite. That the 3-1 is going to beat the 7-5 in this race, or that the favorite's solid and the next 2 or 3 horses that the public likes, I don't like. And I think the horse that's 12-1 is figures second best the way the race shapes up. So something pretty significant like that, before I'm really going to go strong into the race and identify the race as one of my focuses for the day. Something else that can change there is I like to think I'm pretty good at identifying biases as they're happening and trends on the track as they're happening. I focus strongly and put a lot of energy into trying to do that. So if I do catch a bias in progress, I guess, I'll try to take advantage of that. And if you see a fairly significant bias and you're early on it, and not everyone is, the guy on the analyst on TV is not, saying the rail's great or saying, speed is winning every race. If you're a little ahead of the curve, you can almost always find, some bet that you're excited about in that situation because you're looking through a total different lens than most of the public is in that situation.
So let's take a couple of examples that you gave, and you can talk about how you would approach which pools you would play and how you'd structure your ticket. So let's start with, you find a favorite you think is weak. It's an underlay. It's a good chance it could lose or even run out. How do you tackle that? What pools do you target? How do you play that?
Well, it would depend on what I saw around that horse. The first, my rule is I want to take as much of the variance. If I really have an edge, the first thing I want to do is eliminate as much variance and risk as possible and take advantage of that pure edge. So the first thing I'm going to do is, can I make a win bet? That's not what I'm bred for because that's not what my dad did. But that's what I've learned is, and that's not always my instinct, but that is the smart play. If there's a horse at 3 or 4-1 that, you really believe in that horse and you think he's, 50% to win, I think the smart play over time is to make the focus of your play a win bet, or make it, at least half of what you're going to bet a win bet, and then move on to trying to destroy the race and make a week or make a month. But you and being aggressive in doing that. And that's one thing the win bet does, is it takes a little of the pressure off. It helps me to spread a little less. It helps me to target those other bets, whether it's vertical or whether it's horizontal. It's a lot easier to live with playing one cold double and missing the second race after you've cashed a significant win bet on the first horse than it is to, decide not to make the win bet and play 2 or 3 horses in the second leg and then watch a horse that that you don't like anyway win, and you lost your entire bet. So, me as from a money management perspective, I think that not making that win bet is not only wrong, but it's also has. If you're playing every day, you're playing seriously, it has negative impacts throughout the rest of that card and maybe into the next day and maybe just on your mental state. So I believe in when you're gambling, doing serious gambling, I believe guardrails are your friend. Anytime that you can come up with a guardrail that is valid, a rule for yourself that is right, I believe that helps to keep you from going off the road. And I have several guardrail ideas that I use to keep myself from, just from venturing off into trying to prove a point or letting your emotions of what's going on in during the rest of the day push you to be too aggressive or not aggressive enough or whatever. It helps with consistency for me. So the first thing I'm going to do when I see real value is, why not make a win bet?
I like that. So you're saying start with the lowest variance bet and make sure you've got a good part of your investment there. And then the rest is sort of gravy if you're right on your opinion, right?
Yeah. And it does it make sense? It does in my real life, betting. It just kind of frees me up to be a little more aggressive. It keeps me from, it takes a little the worry out of missing, because if that horse wins, I would love to hit everything, but I'm going to walk away winning for the race, and that's going to help me in my approach to the rest of the day, and I'm going to have some bullets, and I'm going to be in a positive frame of mind because I may have only taken one step forward, but I took a step forward. I didn't go backward when I was right. And that's depending on your mindset, that, that can have all kinds of negative connotations, and we don't need that as horse players. Everybody has to know themselves, but I know that that's not, I'm perfectly willing to, that's not what works best for me. I'm perfectly willing to take some risk on when I need to, when that's the play, when that's where the value is. But I don't want to, I get enough risk in my work life without going looking for it.
Now listen to Inside the Pylons, who tells us how a bad favorite is a player's best friend. He's another that talks about reducing variance when he tosses the favorite by using a grouping of horses and exotics rather than just playing one horse to win. He emphasizes that despite what you may have been told all your life, if you bet properly, finding weak favorites is a much easier way to turn a long-term profit than picking winners.
Not liking horses is the easiest way to find ways to extract money in a race. liking horses is tough, but it's doable. But it's just not as, liking horses is not as easy as not liking horses. That's the best way I can put that. And if you learn how to not like horses and learn how to find bad favorites, that's the easiest way to make money in this game. Because it does two things. It automatically gives you value on your other horses and automatically lets you go where other people aren't in the parimutuel game, whether it be horizontals or verticals. And if you can do that, then you're way ahead of the game.
So that's great. And I think probably, like you said, that's the opposite of what most people do. They try to pick, a winner versus trying to, beat a favorite. And
yes. And when they don't like a favorite, they don't have the conviction to toss them, which is ridiculous. But, it's like, what if he wins? And like I hear this, you hear this from everybody on TV and stuff. And that's why they're on TV and they're not gambling. Is because you can't have an opinion where you hate the favorite and you're still using them anyway. I mean, that defeats every logical and common sense thought of wagering.
Yeah, give us an example, just hypothetical of, you see a race, you spot something you'd want to play, how you exploit that edge that you spot, looking at the odds based on your opinion.
Well, I know just people talk about variance and stuff and how if you play longer prices, there's a lot of variance. And like that seems, a lot of the things I say, that's the people's arguments. Well, you got to have an unlimited bankroll to do that. You've got to, you're going to have big, long losing streaks and stuff like that. Well, they're wrong because they don't understand what I'm talking about. And, if you don't like a favorite and your way to attack it is to bet a 15-1 shot to win, well, then, yeah, you're going to have a ton of fucking variance. It's like, you're going to, you might go 30 or 40 races before 50 races before you cash a ticket. And it's like, but if you understand how to extract money from the races in that you hate a favorite without having the variance, then you understand that there really is no variance other than your opinion that you don't like the favorite and whatever percentage that is. So let's say you have a 10-horse field and you don't like the favorite. And if you're good at finding bad favorites, let's say that 40% of the time in a very competitive race, that favorite will be out, right? Well, if you bet the race properly and you don't pick one horse to beat the favorite, then you can reduce your variance that way while also increasing volume, which both of those mean you win more money. And so if I don't like a favorite, first, I'm not looking for a horse to bet in the race. I'm looking for a grouping of horses that I can play tries and supers around. And then, it might be 4 horses, it might be 6 horses, that I all think have a shot to hit the number, that if the favorite runs out, I will cash that ticket. You might look at a race and you might say, oh, I hate the favorite. And 4 other horses can't, I hate them. I hate 4 other horses. Well, then you're left with 5 horses. So you play around those 5. You play tries, supers, maybe some exactas. And, you want to play, if the prices are big enough, if it's not B, C, D, E, if it's not the second favorite, third favorite, fourth favorite, fifth favorite that you like against the favorite, then you can play some try boxes and some super boxes with all 5. And then you can go on your next step. You go and you key the horses that you either like best or offer the best value. If you look at 5 horses in the race that you like, and one of them is 20-1 and you like them equal with the 7-2 shot, well, you're going to key him for extra. And, if you like the 4-1 shot best of the rest, then you're going to key him because you like him best. So there's other ways to add to the play to where if you're right on your secondary tickets, which would be your secondary press opinion, that you're going to win more money. So if you do that, you reduce your variance. So let's say that, the favorite, I'm going to be right about the favorite being out 40% of the time. Well, if I play that way, I'm probably going to cash something at least half of that time. So I'm now cashing in 20% of my races with upside. And I mean, that's very good. And the whole thing is solely off the opinion I don't like the favorite. And, cashing in one out of 5 races, I mean, that's reducing a lot of variance, but it's not reducing a lot of variance in what you can win, because you can still crush those races, obviously. And people just don't. That's what I mean. People don't understand yet how to extract money from from good opinions. Like I said, they don't know how to expound upon. Sometimes they don't even know when they have a good opinion. And that's what people need to learn. And I still see people that have been doing this for 30, 40 years that don't quite understand like what their best opinions are in a race and which ones are valuable and which ones aren't. And it's just kind of funny to me because, like racing kind of keeps people in the dark on stuff like that. Like but when you've done other gambling games and you've learned gambling theory and other gambling games, it becomes easier to understand it in racing. But when you've never delved into other gambling games, it's tough to understand where the value is in your opinion, because it's more just about picking winners. That's what you're taught from the beginning. So there's just, it's the betting side of it that's so important. It's understanding how to extract money from your opinions through wagering. That's the only thing that matters. If you have a good opinion, that's all that matters.
So that was a great example of how you extract value when you find a bad favorite. And it sounds like that might be a big part of, how you attack the vertical pools. Is there any other kind of scenarios that are typical that you try to exploit beyond just, a weak favorite?
Yeah, I mean, I'll look at races and I do like horses, but my first instinct to look at race, the first thing I look for is, first thing I do is I look at the board, look at the exacta pools and see who the favorite is. And then I look at that horse and see if I can see anything. So my first engagement with every race I look at pretty much is looking directly at the favorite and seeing if I can find something I don't like about him. And that could be anything. That could be change in distance, change in surface, layoff, change in barn, sloppy track, just something. And, just something that would add a question mark to him. Big drop, just, something I just don't like about the horse. Needs the lead, and I see another horse that's figures to be in front of him. Just a million things, I mean, it's basically it's just logical handicapping. But you have to be, when you find something like that, you can't, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no, well, he could be okay, or he might make the lead, or, yeah, the layoff really doesn't bother me because this trainer's good. You have to have conviction. If you don't like him, he's out, and you need to bet accordingly. And that's what hurts people, is they just don't have the conviction to, toss something that they figure can win. Or if you look at him and say, yeah, he's got it, this horse has a chance. He might even be the horse you like best in the race to win. But, you look at him, you say, he's got a 25% chance to win in my book, and he's 4-5. And it's like, okay, well, the field's deep. A bunch of horses can win. That's why I think he's only got a 25% chance to win, but he's 4-5. You just have to blindly hope that he's, you just have to bet knowing that the odds, his odds and his exacta prices and his gimmick prices, which are going to line up with his odds, are way over bet. And you just have to say, hey, I'm pitching him, even though you might like him, because the odds are too low. And that creates value on all the other horses that you like. Yeah, in verticals, you always want to try. In verticals, when you have an opinion, like to try to beat the favorite, okay? And as I discussed a little bit earlier, your first bet should be like aiming at the center of the green. And then like your next set of bets should be pin hunting. And like, so you'll have two different sets of wagering. And like, you might even have three, the first one might be aiming at the center of the green. The second one might be aiming like 10 feet to one side of the pin. And the other one might be aiming right at the pin. Okay. So you might have three sets. So that's what you want to do. It's never wrong if you have an opinion. Like if you don't like a favorite and you love a horse, then it's never wrong just to aim at the pin by keying that other horse. But you have to love, like I said, if your opinion is just that you hate the favorite and you don't love another horse, you should aim for the center of the green on your first set of bets, and then you can press from there. But if you hate a favorite and you love another horse in the race, then go for it. Aim at the pin, key your other horse, and go for it. But don't force that opinion. That's what I said. If you hate the favorite, don't just say, well, I'm going to bet this horse because he looks the best of the rest and he's 15-1 and I'm just going to bet him to win. Like, while you'll be okay there, in the long run, you're going to have big variance and you're not going to be able to pump out the volume in a race if your opinion's good at hating the favorite.
Next, Jonathan Stettin shares some of the same ideas as others, but makes it clear that he does not chase extreme long shots, even if they are overlays, and seldom bets against a horse that he thinks is the most likely winner, even when it is an underlay. He would rather pass the race or play other pools than the win pool than bet against his own opinion. So let's talk a little bit about on the win bets. It sounds like you're willing to bet like a 9-5 shot you love, like Goodnight Olive, or longer price horses. Is there sort of a sweet spot, a certain range of odds, or is it just any time you think you might have value that you go into the win pool?
It's a tough question for me to answer accurately. It all depends. I mean, Goodnight Olive was a little shorter price than I like to bet to win. Okay. But I didn't expect her to be that price. It was Breeders' Cup day. I thought she was going to be 3-1, 7-2. When she opened up even money, I was like, wow, I definitely told the wrong people, and I knew who they were. And I said, but it's Breeders' Cup day. She'll still go off what I think she'll drift up. She did, but not to what I thought she would. And I was already committed to that. And, I took it because I was extremely confident. But as far as being a sweet spot, no. Like I said, I like when the horse that I like is longer odds than shorter odds, and I'll bet more on a longer price horse than a shorter price horse because, like I said, I want to make it count. One thing that'll make me sometimes reduce my bet. It won't back me off entirely, but I've been doing it long enough to know certain betting trends. And, pretty much most of the time, Goodnight Olive, I was wrong. But most of the time, I have a good idea what a horse is going to go off or should go off. So if a horse is, in my opinion, ice cold on the board, and I know it's a betting outfit, and, there's just something not right, I won't let that horse beat me if I think they're going to win. I'll still bet, but I might reduce my bet and reduce my enthusiasm because something's, just doesn't look right. But I'll still bet. And sometimes I'll be, stubborn and say, you know what? I'm going to go with my opinion. And even though this one's cold on the board and I think, should be 5-1 and they're 9-1, taking no money in the exotics or anything like that, I'll still press, but sometimes I will notice that and it will back me off. Sometimes it won't. I guess it depends on the circumstances and just one of the better intangibles in this game, which I happen to believe strongly in, is sometimes you got to trust your gut. So if your gut's telling you something's not right, trust it. Sometimes if your gut's telling you, they're wrong and you're right, I'll go with that. You know what I mean? Like, even though they're cold on the board, I'll still press my opinion.
So it sounds like you're still trying to really make a score even on the win pool, but if you're really confident in a shorter priced horse, you're still willing to play it if you think there's value there.
Correct.
But typically you're looking for a little bit, you're trying not to get the lower price range. You're looking for that value at a little higher price in most cases.
Right. And one thing that I do that a lot of people that are very successful don't do, okay, and will disagree with me, and probably some of the people that you've had on the show and will have on the show will probably disagree with me on this, okay? But when we're talking about favorites, okay, I will not bet against a favorite because, I don't like this horse at that price. I like it at 2-1. I don't like it at 8-5 or 7-5. I'll either not bet or I'll bet it anyway. I'm not afraid to bet or single a favorite if that's who I like. I look not to for the value aspect, but I won't bet against my own opinion. If my opinion is that the favorite is going to win the race, I'm not betting against that horse. I always make, one of the things I'll always say is, and a lot of bettors will disagree with this and say I'm wrong, but to me, there's no value at all in a losing wager. You could bet 2,000 on a 10-1 shot that you think had as good a chance as the 6-5 shot. If you lost, there's no value. If the 6-5 shot beats you, I'd rather have 2,000 at on a 6-5 shot and collect 4,200 than 2,000 on a 10-1 shot and say, well, yeah, I made the smarter bet, but you lost. Now, if I think they both have the same chance, or I think the 10-1 shot has a better chance, obviously I'm going to do what anybody who's played this game long enough is going to do. But if I don't think that, I won't take the longer shot just because it's the longer shot if I don't think the horse has a realistic chance of beating the favorite. I won't bet against my own opinion. I won't let the money and the public's opinion and the odds make my opinion for me.
Yeah, I think one of the things you're saying that I think is a good point is, a value isn't necessarily a long shot, right? A value is when you're getting a better price than you think the horse warrants. You expect the horse has a 50-50 chance to win. You're getting 2-1. There's value even though it's 2-1.
Correct.
Just because the horse is 20-1 doesn't mean it's a value play unless you think it has a better than a 20-1 chance of winning. Is that
exactly? Just to use it because it's 20-1. If you know what I mean, if it should be 30 or 50-1, or if it's a horse that you really think has hardly any chance at all, I don't care what the price is. I don't want to bet a horse like that. Well, he should be 20-1 and he's 50-1. But if I don't think he can win, I don't care if he's 100-1. I don't want to invest on.
Next, Marshall Gramm talks about his grinded out style of win betting and his inside out approach to trying to make a bigger score, and how he enjoys trying to spin straw into gold and create value through bet structure using low-priced, underlaid favorites. Yeah, that's really interesting. So on your win bets, is there a kind of what are the odds that you're looking for? Do you kind of have a typical range that you're playing in? What's the most common kind of bet? Are you playing, how low you go in terms of price, and, how high does it get? I mean, what kind of range are we talking about there?
I will go even money 4 to 5. At 4 to 5, it's rare, but I will take 4 to 5 if I really love a horse and think it can't lose. I'll take even money. I'll take 6 to 5. I would love to get 4 or 5, 6 to 1. It all depends on relative probabilities, right? So, if I think a horse should be 2 to 1, right, have at least a 1 in 3 chance of winning, and it's 4 to 1, I mean, that's going to be a bet for me. If I think a horse is nearly a cinch and it's 4 to 5 or even money, that's a big bet for me, right? So it really depends on, I don't make odds lines, but at least I'm thinking about it in my head. It really depends on what odds I'm getting versus what I think the horse's chances are. So, I play a lot of 3 to 1, 4 to 1 shots, 7 to 2 shots. I am much more of an old school grinded out player. I'm not a bet a little to win the lot in general, which is kind of less fun, right? Because I don't have that many great scores to talk about. If you sort of, hey, I bet $1,000 on this 5 to 2 shot. How exciting is that to talk about? Versus hitting a nice pick 5 or something like that.
So I would kind of characterize what you do. Then you're kind of an inside out bettor. You focus on the win. If you see a really good exacta play, you may play that. If you think, if maybe you even build it out to the try or super, if you have a strong opinion beyond just the winner. And the same on the multi-race bets. You're just going to bet to win, but maybe you play a double or a pick 3 or pick 4 if you feel like, you have strong opinions in those other legs, but you're really kind of win centric and you build out from there. Would that be a good description?
That's probably right. When I'm looking at a race and I find a horse I really like to win, sometimes I will play the exacta and try to multiply my winnings, right? So, if I like a horse that's 3 to 1 and that's the horse that I like, I'm going to bet it, and that'll be a majority of my bets. And then I'll play maybe a smaller exacta, getting rid of some other horses and hoping to get a bigger payout as a result of being a little bit more narrow. But I'm going to, again, focus on the key. I don't want to, if I have a 3 to 1 horse I like, or, even better, if I have an 8 to 1 horse I like, I don't want to screw it up by, keying the horse in the pick 3 or pick 5 and losing, or keying the horse on top in the try and losing, right? There's nothing worse than hearing from bettors, well, I had an 8 to 1 key and it won, but I missed the pick 5, right? Well, if you're an 8 to 5 key, you should be betting that 8 to 1 key. You should be betting that 8 to 1 horse in a much larger denomination than you would be approaching the pick 5 itself, right? I'll play straight tries, exactas. I've even played straight supers, right? In the Pacific Classic, I was looking at the Pacific Classic in 2022. Flatlines won the 5, right? So how do you make a bet out of that? Well, I ended up playing a superfecta, Flightline over Country Grammar over Royal Ship and Express Train in 3rd and 4th, right? So that's basically a 1x1 by 2x2 superfecta. Well, the super paid 13 to 1. The trifecta paid 6 to 1. And so, I basically turned, I think, a fairly obvious outcome, right? Because Flightline was the obvious winner, right? And the 1 to 5 reflected it. Country Grammar was a very short price, and I've always been very high on that horse, especially going a route of ground. And then the 2 other logical runners, right? So you basically toss the other 2, so that's in a 6-horse field, and you're getting the way I basically made it 1x1 by 2x2, 6 to 1 in the super, and 5 to 2 in the try. And so making something out of nothing. And I enjoy trying to make something out of nothing, right? So, many people will look at the superfecta, pay like $1.41 for 10 cents, right? But if you have it, for $100, that's $1,400. So
that I call that spinning straw into gold. And to me, that's what you're doing there. You're taking, the winner really there's no value, and you're trying to come up with a ticket structure that enables you to produce some value out of that. That's something I'm terrible at, but it sounds like that's in your wheelhouse.
Well, I think it's a lot of fun.
Finally, Dennis Montoro talks about value from a computer modeling perspective and how he turns a horse race into a math problem.
If data is publicly available, it's probably already factored into the price. And that's, again, another important concept to understand, because while, let's just take buyer speed figures, and I'm not bashing them at all, while at face value, they might help predict winners, they won't help you make money by betting off of them because of they're already factored into the price. In fact, they may have a negative impact, meaning that you should almost fade the buyers when formulating probabilities. So that's a concept I don't think a lot of people would fully understand, but it's something that definitely exists, where if you're scanning the past performances, and I'm just saying this in general, I don't think it applies to every single piece of data in the past performances, but if you're looking at stuff that every other horse player is looking at, it's really, really tough to find horses that are going to outrun their odds. So definitely an important thing to understand.
Yeah, I really like what you said, and like you said, I try to explain this to people, but it is hard to understand, I think, for many, in that, there's information that helps you understand, which horses are more likely to win. And there's certain ways to look at that information to deduce that, but that's what everybody else is doing. So when you're first learning, you've got to learn that so you understand, how other people think, but also you understand sort of fundamentals about how to, predict who's going to win a race. But it's not going to help you make money. It might help you pick winners, but it won't help you make money, because in order to make money, you have to have a different opinion than the public, and it has to be sharper. And like you said, you could use the same information if you actually look at it differently. So like you said, maybe there's something that everybody overplays, like buyer figures, the best last out buyer. Let's say people tend to overbet those horses. Well, you can use that information just differently. Instead of using that to bet on that horse with the best last out buyer, you use that information, to look for a reason not to bet on that horse. So if you can form a contrarian opinion using the same information, that's one way to get an edge. The other way is to have information that other people don't have, which you mentioned as well. So can you maybe talk about how a computer model might help you do either of those things, to gain an edge?
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing I wanted to say was, a good example of what you're saying about buyers being overbet. And I don't want people to, think that that doesn't mean that a horse doesn't have a good chance to win. Because I feel like when I explain this to people, that's where they automatically go to. What I'm saying is what a model would do with overbet last out buyers is there could be, for simplicity's sake, a even money horse. And let's forget about takeout for a second. Say that like the implied probability is 50% for that horse. What a model would do with if that horse had a last out best buyer, the model might say, oh, that horse has a 48% chance, and that 2% might be reallocated to some of the other horses for whatever reasons. But I think it's important to understand that that horse still has a 48% chance to win the race. It's just that if you actually bet that horse, it's going to be a negative expected value. And what was the second? Can you repeat the second part?
Well, so there was to me, there's two kind of basic ways to get an edge. One is to take the same information other people have, but approach it with a contrarian opinion, so that you actually use it in a different way than they do, which is kind of what that, best last out buyer example, where people will play that because it does mean the horse might be more likely to win. But since everybody knows that, it actually gets over bet, and the value is actually negative. So that you kind of talked about that one. But the other is you've got information that other people don't have. I mean, it might be insider information, that they've been working this horse at 3 a.m. and it's firing bullets every time. That's the kind of silly one. But other information you might have in terms of back when Andy Beyer first started his speed figures, they weren't publicly available, kind of thing.
And you learn some concepts pretty much right away if you want to take sports betting seriously. And the first thing is just understanding probability theory. And what I really mean by that is, when you look at a sports book and the prices that they're offering, same thing with horse racing, that every price they're offering, there's a certain implied probability that goes along with it. And I think as a kid, or just as a novice bettor, I never thought like that. I didn't know that if you see a plus 300 money line, that the simple implied probability of that is going to be 25%. So you should only be betting a price like that when it's north of 25% for simplicity's sake there. But I think that's something that a lot of novice bettors don't take into account. And to me, that's everything when it comes to placing a bet, is that it comes down to what price are you getting? What's the associated probability? What's your probability? And, what's the expected value? So, I never heard the term expected value until I really started taking sports betting seriously and was starting to, make sizable bets accordingly. So I think, when it comes to sports betting, that's probably the number one thing that I've learned.
So for you, sports betting, it's not picking. It was pretty obvious you weren't just picking winners. You were trying to find a price that you thought was worth playing, right? That was your focus.
100%. And that'll never change. I mean, when it comes to any sort of gambling, whether it be sports betting, horse racing, even some in assets like stocks. I mean, you really should be pricing things in terms of probability of how things would move or what price you're getting. So it all boils down to price and probability.
And that's just sort of ingrained in your thinking as a sports player, a sharp player. I mean, not someone that actually understands what they're doing. It's just sort of second nature. And that the funny part, and this came up in previous discussions with some of the guests, is that's just not the second nature of a lot of horse players. They're just focused on picking winners, and they don't even think about that price part. Which is kind of amazing, but there are some players who've been doing this for a long time, and they still, and they're sharp, smart, and they're good at identifying winners, but they don't consider value at all. They just pick the horse they like. They pick the winner and bet it, and they don't really, without regard to price, they think that horse is the winner. They'll bet that. Now, some of them may bet it, decide they won't bet at a certain price, but you'll never see them bet on their second or third choice in a race, even if that's the one where maybe there's more value. They don't think that way. They just think, who's the most likely winner in this race, and I'm going to bet that horse, or maybe I'll decide whether or not I'm going to bet that horse. But they never ever think about playing a horse that might not be the one they think is most likely to win. Where I'm guessing, I shouldn't assume, that like in your models, you're playing horses that are the second, third, fourth choice if they think they offer value.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I hate to say this and for people to take it the wrong way, because there's many different ways to be a profitable bettor when horse racing. But for me, it's a math problem. And I've kind of been vocal about this on Twitter at times, where I'm very, very impressed with people who don't use a model and can be profitable. I think that's amazing. And I foolishly used to think that if you didn't have a model, you were a loser, and that's just dead wrong. But yes, I mean, what you're saying is, when I say price and probability, I'm really just turning a horse race into a math problem.
Well, that's all for the special best of edition of the Bet with the Best podcast. I hope you gained some insight on how to find and exploit an edge. I want to thank all the guests who contributed, including Maury Wolff, Michael Kipness, Mike Maloney, Inside the Pylons, Jonathan Stettin, Marshall Gramm, and Dennis Montoro. Most of all, I want to thank all you listeners for supporting the program. May you boldly go where no horse player has gone before.